Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're doing a bit of Intarsia. Now, Intarsia can be tricky. Intarsia can be difficult, but Intarsia can also be easy and accessible if you use a couple of methods that are kind of outside of the norm. And that's what we're going to look at today. Not that traditional Intarsia that the Intarsia snobs say has to be done. We're going to do it in that cheaters Intarsia, which I mentioned back in my Halloween countdown calendar just a couple weeks ago. So guys, let's head over to the bench, and I want to show you the pattern I've got for this. Well, as much as folks don't want to hear it, Christmas is just around the corner. And now is the time that we're going to want to start making our items for Christmas. And I thought it'd be a great idea to combine both an Intarsia tutorial as well as a Christmas themed item and kill two birds with one stone. So this is the pattern that I have. It is this cute little Christmas bear. And guys, I found this on the internet. It's a free pattern download. I'll place the link to this pattern down in the video's description so that you can get it for yourself. But I just want to point out a few things about Intarsia patterns in general. Number one, if you look around at this pattern, the first thing you're going to notice is these arrows. They are everywhere. Everywhere these arrows are. And what they mean is this is telling you the direction of the grain of the wood. Normally with Intarsia, you use different species of wood to get different effects and different colors, but a lot of the effect of Intarsia and a lot of the wow factor comes from the direction of your grain. So you want to follow along with these lines here, and that will tell you exactly which way it is that your grain should be traveling. One other thing, guys, I want to point out is the rise. There is something called the rise in some of these pieces, and it's denoted by the letter R. And if you look right here, there's an R here, and there's an R right down here, and then there's another R right here. But this is an R times 2. And what that denotes is that those pieces will be shimmed up higher than the rest. So this nose section and this mouth section will be raised up. This nose itself will be raised up twice as high as what this is. And if you look here at the pattern, they actually give you rising shim patterns. I've actually never seen that in an Intarsia pattern before, so that's kind of a cool addition. And they also tell you over here in the legend that it's raised up by 1/4 inch thick plywood that's cut slightly smaller than the parts. So they actually give you a lot of information here. Well, as well on this pattern, it has certain letters. You can see D, W, M, D, what else we got here? L, T. Those are specific to this pattern. If we follow the legend, they actually denote the colors of the different types of wood, with medium shade of wood, light shade of wood, medium dark shade of wood, etc., etc. And if you were going to be making this pattern in the traditional way of Intarsia, following the grain and the colors, you would be doing that and trying to choose your wood colors appropriately or accordingly. That's one of the great things about Intarsia, guys, is it takes small little scraps of wood and you can pick it out and, specify your grains. You can do all kinds of crazy cool stuff with it. But we're going to do something different, because not everybody has access to a lot of woods. Not everybody has access to these exotics that guys make Intarsia out of. Not a lot of guys have access to those specialty things. So we're going to do this kind of in the cheater's way. Now that cheater's way is a little different. And the entire pattern, the entire thing that we're looking at here, We are going to make this out of 3/4 inch thick pine from the big box store, but we're going to do a few twists along the way. So according to the pattern, it suggests to enlarge it to 132% just to keep everything proportionate here to the sizes, like the eyes especially. And that is what I've done. I've made multiple copies here of the pattern at 132%. And once we get that done, we can start with our pieces. So I think the very first thing that I want to do is I want to pay attention to the grains, and we are going to take this pattern right here. This is our head pattern, and we are going to transfer these pieces onto a piece of 3/4 inch pine, paying attention to the grain direction. Well, if you'll want to go traditional, you can cut out one piece. And then after you get that one piece, you'll align it up with your pattern, say here, that would be attached to another piece of wood, and you would line it up and then trace your cut edge along to make sure that everything lines up, and then you'll cut the second piece, sanding up to the line to make sure it all fits perfectly. That would be a traditional way of Intarsia. We are not being traditional. Today we are being hacks. So what we're going to do, all of these pieces here that have the grain direction vertical, the only thing traditional that I've done here is align the grain. And what we're going to do is, using a thin curved blade on this 3/4 inch thick pine, I think a number 3 will probably do it. I'm going to very carefully cut out all of these pieces, following the lines as best I can. These 3/8 holes for the eyes, those will get drilled out. So let me get that cut, and I'll show you where we're going to go from there. And once you get that cut, you should have something that looks like this. Now guys, if you used a thin curved blade like what I did, in my case a number 3, which is undersized for 3/4 inch pine, you have to take it slow and let the gullets of the blade do their job. But look at the fit. Look at how perfect this is. And I know it's not traditional, and you know what? I don't care. We're having fun. I don't care about traditional at this point. So we have these pieces cut. The grain on the nose goes crossways, so I'm going to cut that separately. But we're going to go through the entire pattern now. We can cut all of these in one shot. We can cut the foot in one shot. It looks like we can cut the belt pieces in one shot, the jacket, and this arm here, you know. So follow the pattern, align the grains, and when you get all the pieces done, we can fit everything together and we can try for some shaping, and I'll show you what to do then. Now guys, if you want to, if you're not in the mood to fuss around with all this grain alignment and all that jazz, just cut it all in one shot out of one piece of pine. It's not even close to traditional to do that, but with some of the methods we're going to add to this a little later, grain direction really isn't going to be a huge factor here. So I'm just trying to throw a bit of tradition into it. So let's get this cut and then we can move on. And before too long, you have all of your pieces cut. Now, guys, here's the thing. We're going to remove the patterns, but it's easy to get confused on some of these pieces. Maybe not ones that are obvious like his hat, but how about something like his nose, which could very easily be reversed, or this square here, or any of the other small pieces that are somewhat symmetrical. So on the back of each one of these pieces, we're just going to write the letter B, and that will tell us which is the back or the front. Then it's time to start shaping these. Well, I'm not going to get too into the shaping. There are so many methods that you can use to shape these things. You can use a Dremel tool, a power carver. You can use an oscillating drum sander. You can sand it by hand. You can use a belt sander. You can use a palm sander. Files, rasps, you name it. If you can shape wood with it, you can shape these pieces. And I'm going to start with this face and the muzzle area here. Now, I have cut out using their shim patterns, which, like I said before, I've never seen in an Intarsia project, so that's pretty cool. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you what a difference it makes when you shim this up. So I have my two shims. We're going to take our face, place it over top of our shims here, and there. I don't know if the camera is showing that, but look at the depth now that we've got on this face between the muzzle, the nose, and the face itself. So I'm going to walk you through shaping this face, and the rest is basically all up to you. It's all subjective from here. So the very first thing that I want to do, I'm going to take this nose away, and I want to shape this muzzle. And what we're going to do is I'm going to place quite a bit of a round over all the way around on this thing using an oscillating drum. But I want to do a little bit of shaping here in the middle where that lip is split. So let me get the shaping around here done, and then I'll show you what we're going to do next with this piece. Okay, so we'll place that there, and we can already see what a huge difference that makes in the whole project. Just that snout, that shaping of the snout. There's two purposes for shaping. One is to give it 3-dimension, and one is to give it shape. So what we're going to do at this point is on right here on this split section of the nose, of the snout here, I'm going to use my power carver, and I'm just going to get in there and give it a little bit of shape. I might even take a chisel to it and just kind of carve the ends down to shape down into that cut here in the middle. Okay, so there we can see the muzzle. It looks like there's a couple rough areas there. It looks like they're not quite smooth, so a little bit of hand sanding will straighten those out. The good thing about doing cheater Intarsia is with this being pine, it's very forgiving. So we can just place that there where it belongs, place our nose there, and then the lower jaw, and you kind of start to get the idea here of what's going on. So I'm not going to get too much into this. I'm going to get this face shaped, but just something to keep in mind. Think of the whole shape of the teddy bear. If it's an outside edge, you really want that sharp contour, we'll say, to give it the illusion of 3-dimension, to give it roundness. But if it's an interior shaping right here where the seams of this section and these two sections would meet, you really don't want that sharp contrast. You don't want this thing to look like a bubble bear. So, just be careful how it is that you're going to be shaping this. You also want to keep in mind your other pieces that are going to be going on here. So in the case of, say, his Santa hat, how much shaping do you really want on this outside edge? Probably not very much, just a little bit up to this point, and then sharper shaping around the edge to give it that roundness. So let me get the face done, and I'll show you what it looks like when you take your time and do the shaping. So when it comes to these Intarsia pieces, don't be afraid to add your own little details. This nose is just a simple little nose, but I'm going to attempt to add some little bit of detail that would make it more like a bear's nose. Now, of course, this is completely optional. And if you mess it up, you can always cut a new piece. Okay, and that is pretty much the face done. I could probably use a little more hand sanding, but you get the idea. You can add as much or as little detail as you want. So the next thing that I want to move on to here, I'm not going to show how to sand every single piece because this is all very, it's personal. It's all in how you want to do it. But there are certain pieces that could look better if you do them a certain way. So I'm going to show those. And one of them is this ear. Now the ear goes right here, and you can see what a sharp ridge we have here by the intersection of the ear, and how much this lower lobe of the ear here extends beyond our face. So we're going to seriously shape this, but we want the outside of the ear to be convex, and we want the intersection of the ear to be concave. So we're going to do that with sanding drums and see if we can't get the effect we want. I don't think we need a video of it, but I'm going to get it done and then show you what we're left with. Now, one little trick that I forgot to mention, you can take a mechanical pencil and just run it along the edge here of this piece, and that will essentially show you how deep, roughly, that you need to sand these to get them to the right level so that they match up with the other piece. So you can get in there with your pencil and mark those, and then that'll give you some guidelines as to how far to sand, so you don't sand too much off and then have to sand this one to compensate, and then back and forth, etc., etc. Okay, so let's see if I can show you this on film. I don't know if you can see this, but I've done the inside of the ear to be concave. I've kind of shrunk it down too, like on this big slope in towards the head. The outside of the ear, I've given it a lot of contour around the outside, but it's uneven. This side here is much lower than this side, and I did that to contour it to the head. That's that pencil line that I placed on there. And when you add the concave ear, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That is just fantastic. So again, guys, don't be afraid to shape it as much or as little as you want. If you mess up a piece, you can always recut it. You still have copies of the pattern, or you can make a copy. And as long as you take it slow and follow the lines carefully, you're going to get a match. You're going to get a fit to replace the piece that you mess up. Okay, so I'm going to carry on shaping this entire project. There's really only a couple things that you might want to pay attention to. One would be the shape or the contour of the hat. This line here, if we look at the pattern, this will denote kind of the thinner area where the pom-pom sits at the end. So you kind of want to shrink that below the level of the hat and kind of try to give the hat a little bit of a 3D effect. Same thing too with this trim. This represents the white trim of Santa's hat. That's going to be proud of the red part. If they're both the same level and just have a little bit of an indentation, it doesn't quite look right. So don't be afraid to really get in there and sand the living tar out of this stuff. It's going to be just fine in the end. As well, Santa's bag, there are two small cut lines right here, and if we look on the pattern, we can see that there are dotted lines. Those dotted lines denote contours, not cuts. So we will try to carve the bag a little bit here using those dotted lines as our guide, and probably our power carver or a Dremel if you have one, and we'll try to carve that out a little bit to give the bag kind of a rippled shape. You don't just want it flat, it just doesn't look right. So get your bear all shaped up. There's a lot more to go on this, guys, when it comes to cheater Intarsia, so get it shaped up and I'll see you when we're done. Alright, so at this point in time, you should have something that looks like this. Guys, this was all day. This took me about 6.5+ hours to get shaped the way that I wanted it and the way that I was happy with. And I just want to point out, these lines on my face are from a dust mask. And if you don't have those lines on your face after you are finished this project or finished the shaping, you are doing it wrong. Guys, please, get the dust mask on, keep that dust out of your respiratory system, and, you know, live another day to continue your hobby. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this week. We've really made some awesome progress on this, getting all the pieces cut and shaped and then dry fit together. Guys, this is not a traditional style of Intarsia by any means, but what it is my kind of version of cheater Intarsia. It's a great gateway to get you into a more traditional style, but it also give you a great idea as to whether or not you even like it with all the sanding and shaping. So you might want to give this one a try. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the program. Guys, I want to thank you a ton for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show so far and the content so far. I hope you're going to try this one for yourself. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.